Language learning series, using the web-like method to memorize vocabulary.
All right, let's talk about something every single language learner runs into. How do you actually make new words stick? Well, today we're going to break down a really powerful method that does exactly that. So let's just dive right in. Does this sound familiar? You learn a new word, you feel great about it, maybe you even use it once, and then boom, the next day, it's just gone. It is so frustrating, right? And it can totally make you feel like you just have a terrible memory.
But here's the thing, and it's really good news. The problem probably isn't you at all. It's the way you're learning. See, just repeating a word and its definition over and over, that's like trying to hold on to a single super thin thread. It's just so easy to lose. What we need is a much stronger connection.
So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at why we forget words in the first place. Then, I'll introduce you to this web-like method. We'll break it down into 3 simple steps: form, meaning, and usage. And then, we'll get you ready to actually try it out for yourself. Okay, let's get right into the solution, the web-like method. And it is all about building this rich, strong network of connections for every single new word you learn. The whole idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Think about your memory like a spider web. You know, a single thread is pretty weak. It can snap easily. But a web with dozens of threads all connected to each other, that thing is unbelievably strong. It's the same with words. The more connections you build, the easier it is for your brain to find that word and pull it out right when you need it. And this whole method is built on 3 main pillars. First up is the form, basically what the word looks and sounds like. Second, you have the meaning, what it actually signifies. And third, and this is crucial, is the usage, how it's actually used in the real world. So let's start with that first pillar, the form. And trust me, this goes way, way beyond just knowing how to spell a word. So here are the 4 key parts of a word's form. Of course, you've got spelling. That's the foundation. But then you have its roots or prefixes, which are like these awesome little clues to its meaning. Then it's part of speech. Is it a noun, a verb? And finally, pronunciation and stress. So for example, with the word benefactor, if you know the prefix bene means good, you can instantly connect it to other words like benefit or benevolent. Right there, that's a super powerful connection for your web. You know, this right here is a perfect illustration of why part of speech is so important. So many learners don't realize that feedback is an uncountable noun. But once you know that, it stops you from making that really common mistake of saying feedbacks. It's a tiny little detail, but it makes a huge difference in how natural you sound. And oh my gosh, let's talk about stress. Seriously, as you can see here, where you put the emphasis can completely make or break your pronunciation. With our example word, is it benefactor or is it benefactor? Getting it right, putting the stress on that first syllable, is absolutely key to sounding natural and just being understood. It's another one of those super strong threads in our web. Okay, so we've got the form down. Now let's get to our second pillar, the meaning. This is where things get really interesting, because we're going way beyond just a single dictionary definition.
Has this ever happened to you? It's a classic problem. You see a word, you swear you know, but the sentence it's in makes absolutely 0 sense. Why does that happen? Well, it's because so many words, especially phrasal verbs, are like little chameleons. They completely change their meaning depending on the context.
Okay, let's take a look at the phrasal verb go through. If you only know one definition for this, you're totally missing the bigger picture. It can mean to examine, like to search through a bag. It can also mean to use up, like to spend all your money. Or it can mean to be officially accepted, like when a new law gets approved. By linking these different meanings to single-word synonyms like search, spend, and approve, you're building an even stronger, more connected web. So we've nailed down the form and the meaning. Now for the final and maybe the most important pillar of all, usage. This is where we learn how a word actually behaves out in the wild, in real conversations. Here's a crucial point. Just knowing a word isn't enough. You have to know how to use it correctly. And that really boils down to 3 things. Collocations, which are just the words it likes to hang out with. Formality, is this for a casual chat or a formal essay? And connotation, which is its emotional flavor. Let's circle back to our old friend, benefactor. Native speakers don't usually just say a benefactor. They'll say a generous benefactor or an anonymous benefactor or a wealthy benefactor. These word pairings or collocations are just the natural way the language flows. Learning them helps you sound so much more fluent and not like you're reading from a textbook. Now this is absolutely critical. Connotation. The words skinny and slim both basically mean thin. But listen to the difference. If you tell someone, wow, you're really skinny, you might be suggesting they look unhealthily thin. But if you say, you look very slim, that's a compliment. It means they look attractively thin. The feeling behind the word is completely different.
Here is another fantastic example. The word cheap. You might think it just means a low price, but it often carries this really negative feeling of being low quality. You would never want to tell a potential client, your services are very cheap. Instead, you'd use a word with a positive connotation, like affordable, which communicates good value for the price. This kind of nuance is everything.
All right, we've walked through all the theory. Now it's time for the most important part, actually putting this into practice. It's your turn to go and build your very first web.
So, the next time you come across a new word, don't just write it down with a definition. I want you to follow this path. First, analyze its form, the spelling, the sounds, the grammar. Then explore all of its meanings. And finally, understand its usage, the words it likes to hang out with, and the feeling it gives off. That is how you build the web.
And that's really the whole method. It's a huge shift from just passively trying to memorize things to actively investigating them. Look, it takes a little more effort up front, I'll admit it, but the payoff is massive. You'll have words that you don't just remember, but that you truly understand and can use with total confidence. So my question for you is this: what new word are you going to build a web for first?